Hey Raider Nation, what's good? Jesse Merrick here. Welcome to another episode of the Silver and Black Sports Network podcast. On today's show, we're dissecting the matchup with the Denver Broncos. It is a short week against a divisional opponent. These weeks, we all know, are always interesting because you never really know what you're going to get out of those Thursday night football games. Things always get kind of screwy. Plus, it's also one of those deals where they know each other very well. Now, to help us dive into that game, we're bringing in Cody Alexander of MatchQuarters.com. You guys know, and you've seen him on the show. You know that his football mind is second to none, and you know that he's a defensive guru as well. So he's going to help us explain why the Broncos have been so successful on that side of the ball, what Vance Joseph is doing with a guy like Hufanga, and why that has been a game changer for them on defense. But even though they have been solid, he does say that there is one area the Raiders can expose on that defense. We also dive into the Broncos offense, explaining where they've had the most success, what the Raiders have to watch out for in regards to their rushing attack. It is a two-headed attack back there, and how that he would actually call the defense to slow down Bo Nix and company if he were Patrick Graham. It's a real interesting take there. Plus, since it is a short week, we've got an early installment of Raiders Rounders with our guy Matt Perrault for you, and I will also give you my thoughts on the JAKOBI MEYERS trade and what it means for the team and the wide receiver room going forward. We got all that and more coming your way on what is a jam-packed episode today. All right, guys, as always, before we get it rolling, I want to tell you to check us out online at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and do subscribe to our free Raiders newsletter. Subscribers get our bi-weekly Raiders newsletter straight to your inbox, dropping on Monday and Friday mornings. It's your one-stop shop for all the latest and greatest storylines on the Silver and Black. You're not going to want to miss that. Now, before we do dive into the matchup with the Broncos, let's talk about the trade deadline and the move that the Raiders made. They sent JAKOBI MEYERS to the Jags in exchange for a fourth and sixth round pick, all right? And look, let's be completely honest. This was a move that they needed to make, and I think a lot of people at home, you guys all wanted to see that one happen. And so, look, you don't get better by leaving, sending a guy like JAKOBI MEYERS out the door. I will say that, but obviously this team isn't off to a great start, so you get what you can for him. He's on an expiring deal. He was likely going to be gone anyway, and so they would have probably also gotten a fourth-round compensatory pick if they did let him walk in free agency. Now at least they do lock that in by getting the fourth, and they also get a sixth to go along with it, the extra pick. So I think that's a win for them. Obviously, it's not some insane return. Obviously, a lot of people were saying they were holding out, trying to get more, maybe like a third or something like that. But look, the fact that you get two picks for a guy that was going to leave anyway, that's big. Now also you get more of a look at the rest of the guys in that receiving room. I think this now does mean that Trey Tucker is the Raiders' number one receiver. Obviously, we've seen him excel in the deep passing game. We've seen him at times as well on those like short crossing routes and things like that, the short drags. He's got all the speed in the world. Big opportunity for him to step up. Obviously, it's going to make life a little tougher because, as we said, even when JAKOBI was in the fold, the Raiders didn't have a true number one receiver that struck fear into the eyes of the defenders. Now you let JAKOBI walk, and that's still obviously the case, even more so now. So some guys are going to have to step up, and Trey is number one on that list. Also, they did sign Tyler Lockett. I said it when they brought him in there that he was going to kind of be like that insurance policy for them if they did indeed move on from JAKOBI. That happens. Now they've got Lockett, who does play a similar type of role in this offense, that JAKOBI did. He even said it when we spoke to him yesterday in the locker room that he noticed a lot of similarities between him and JAKOBI MEYERS' game. So I'm real curious to see how Lockett factors into things after having 1 week with the team. Obviously, it's a short week. He's still very much so learning this playbook, but he even said, he's like, Trey is our number one guy. He's going to lead the receiving room. So obviously it's one, and then probably Lockett number two. I know folks would like to see more of Besh. I would like to see him be the number two receiver. After all, let's keep it real. He was a second-round pick for the Raiders. We haven't seen a lot from him. He didn't even get a snap in that game against the Jags. Obviously, that's going to change. Now, Besh is one of those dudes. I asked Chip, I was like, what kind of similarities you see in his game and JAKOBI's game? And Chip wasn't giving us anything yesterday. Let's be completely honest. He wouldn't tip his cap at all. He wouldn't even really give guys his flowers either, aside from JAKOBI saying how great he was. But I guess he just didn't want to let folks know what their thoughts are on what they have in-house are. I think Besh's game is pretty similar to JAKOBI's, at least in the way that they use him throughout training camp. When Besh was in there as the number with the twos, JAKOBI and Besh were doing the same role, just with those different units. So I think we see Besh take over some of that. He's got that positional versatility, plays inside, plays outside, learned it all. I talked to Trey about him. He said how tough that is and that Besh is really learning it and figuring it out. And I think his physical style of play is also something that's very similar to JAKOBI. So a lot more opportunities coming up for him. I hope that they do get him the ball. I think he's only had like 10 targets throughout the whole year. So got to get him involved. You have to see what you get out of your second round pick. I mean, look, it's week 10 and you still don't really know what this guy can be. I think he could be a solid receiver. The development, obviously, in the eyes of the coaching staff has still been slow. There's also the fact that they benched Dante Thornton for this game as well. He was a healthy scratch. So you got to figure out what you have in that guy as well. How much does he factor into things? Probably not a lot, especially if you bench him. And I know he doesn't factor into special teams or anything like that, but he'll still likely be active and in the mix here. The development has been really slow for the coaching staff's liking with him in that regard. But again, season's not going hot. You got to figure out what you have in your young guys. You have to give them opportunities. I don't want to see we're going to see plenty of Tyler Lockett because of the comfortability with Geno, and obviously they want to win these football games, and they feel they're bringing a guy like Tyler, has the familiarity with Geno. Like, we're going to see a lot of him. But I want to see a lot of Jack Bech, and I want to see him get involved in this game as well, and see him and Brock kind of play off of each other. Again, the physical style of play that they bring to the table is interesting. We saw a lot where Brock was stacked behind JAKOBI a lot. JAKOBI, again, is that physical style of receiver, giving Brock those clean releases. I think maybe we'll see some of that where we have, Jack Bech, again, a strong physical receiver guy right there lined up on the line, Brock behind him, and see how they can play off of it that way. Brock can get a little bit cleaner releases. Not that he doesn't always need the help because Brock is elite, but giving him that runway to be able to create the space there, going to be a game changer for him. I'm really interested to see how Jack looks in those situations when they are in that stacked look in particular. But that's my take on the JAKOBI trade. Had to happen. Look, I like that the Raiders didn't trade anybody else. I know there's a talk about Max and all that stuff. That wasn't going to happen. There's no way in hell they were going to trade Max and blow everything up. There was a lot of talk about Jackson Powers-Johnson. I thought that would have been ridiculous if the staff traded him. That doesn't come to fruition either. He's a young, talented guy. He plays with the most juice of anybody along that offensive line. You keep him in the fold. You keep developing him. Forget this whole competing thing with him. He's your guy along that offensive line. I like what he's brought, and I'm glad that he's still with the team. So in the meantime, guys, that's just kind of my take on the trade deadline. I think the Raiders did the one thing that they absolutely needed to do. They obviously weren't big-time buyers, and I don't think you're going to be when you're at this position right here, but you have to get more draft capital. They have to get more draft capital, and that's exactly what they did in getting the 2 picks there for JAKOBI. So again, I think that's for a win. That's a win for a guy that was going to walk anyway. But in the meantime, let's keep it pushing and get to our conversation with our guy Cody Alexander from matchquarters.com. He's going to help us break down this matchup with the Broncos, and as always, he brought the heat. You know he's good. All right, Cody, the time is finally here. We've been talking about it all year. For everybody at home, we know you're a Broncos fan, so don't light them up in the comments here, but we know that you bring a great football mind to the table here, so we had to bring you in to help us preview this matchup between the Raiders and the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. Let's get into the fact that the Broncos are on a roll, man. Won 6 straight games, if memory serves me right now, tied for the best record in the league. How do you wrap your head around the season you guys have had thus far?
Yeah, if you look at it, we should be undefeated. I mean, that's kind of like if there's a frustration part, it's probably twofold. It's like, what's going on offensively at the beginning of games? And then 2, you look at it and be like, we could be so far ahead right now just if we just pull things together at the last little bit of games. We have in both instances versus the Colts and the Chargers, we end up losing on field goals. So to me, it's like, that's what it is. I love seeing the dominance of the defense, but in terms of like the offense, it's too hard early. We got to figure that out.
Yeah, it's the old hockey cliche of like, oh, got to start fast, right? Obviously, Raider Nation hoping you guys don't, but we'll get to the offense in a second. Obviously, with you in the building here, we got to start with the defense. The Broncos have obviously been unreal in that regard. I think number 3 in total defense, but in terms of sacks, they have been killing it. I think the next closest team is like 12 behind them or something like that.
Yes.
What's been the key defensively for your guys' group there?
I think it's the players up front. It's not necessarily what Vance Joseph is doing. I mean, a lot of 5-man fronts, which that puts a ton of pressure on the front, really the offensive lines, because you're essentially stacking every single offensive line. So you have one-on-one matchups. Well, you have Cooper and Benito, who, by the way, I think a couple weeks ago I looked at this. Cooper actually had a better get off than Benito, which is insane to me to even think, because Benito looks like he should be playing corner sometimes.
Yeah.
And what that does is, so this defense is built in a sense that because they've stacked that line, that they're going to play a lot of man coverage in the back end. I think they're playing they're playing more than the Browns, which is insane. So it's like, I think it's like almost like 60% of the time they're in man coverage. But you have Patrick Tane, you have Riley Moss, you have a guy in Hufanga who can move around and kind of be kind of a leveraging tool. So they've really started to use him in the last couple of weeks, really since the Giants game, near the box as a blitzer, as somebody that's down in the present and being able to kind of move around. So they've kind of adjusted the way that they look pre-snap to post-snap compared to what it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, well, one of the things is, like, last year, I know they were cranking up the pressure a ton. That was one of the reasons why they racked up so many sacks. This year, they have backed off in terms of the blitz rate, right?
Yeah, so they're really relying on that front. And really, Zach Allen is kind of the engine to this, just because he's such a presence inside that he's going to demand a double team. There's not really many guards in the NFL that you really want to leave one-on-one with him. You're going to try and chip him with a center at some point. If he's in the B gap, you're going to try and bring that tackle. Well, that's the problem, because you're not going to leave a tight end on Cooper or Benito, especially not Benito. So you have this compounding problem where the front structure is so solid, because even a guy like Franklin Myers, I think he had like 8 sacks last year. He's on pace to have probably that this year. So they have a defense where every single one of these guys can win in the run game and they can win in the passing game. And what that does is, now that man coverage makes the coverage even tighter. And even though you may have a step on him, it doesn't matter, because the quarterback can't get the guy the ball.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you did mention Hufanga at one point in there. Obviously, he's been a huge addition for the Broncos back there, and they're using him so many different ways. What's been the key to his success this year and the way Vance is using him?
Really just moving him around as a leveraging tool near the box, especially on early downs. They can do some different things too to get Brandon Jones into coverage. That's the one scary thing, is because Brandon Jones in coverage, if you go back to the Giants game, you go back to some of these other games, he has problems covering tight ends. So if there is one thing that the Raiders can take advantage of, I think, with this, is like when Brandon Jones is on, Brock Bowers, you need to take advantage of that. They've had there were some struggles with really playing more zone. That's one of the things that they do when Surtain is out. They've traditionally gone to more zone. The Giants really took advantage, and this is something, again, I think the Raiders can do in 12 personnel, putting both tight ends together. The Broncos play a lot of matchups, so both of the corners are going to be with the receiver. And then we saw the tight end wheel. Brandon Jones forgets that he's technically the corner in coverage, and you get these long plays. I mean, the Giants could have ran that play multiple times for big games. I think they hit it twice. So those are things that are concerning going forward, just because Hufanga gives you a presence near the box, but he's also one of the better hybrid safeties because he can actually go deep too. And so they have this kind of rotating mix where Vance Joseph can really mix up the looks.
Yeah, no, definitely. He's been stellar for sure. Kudos to Vance for the way he's used them. You did mention 12 personnel in Brock, so let's get to that. The Raiders obviously had their tight end room healthy for the first time in quite some time in the game against the Jags. They were in 12 personnel actually 58% of the time in that game. How do you think the Broncos do try and combat that usage of 12 personnel that Chip Kelly goes to a lot?
Well, I think they're going to do the same thing. I think that's the pattern for success for the Raiders go against the Broncos, because you want to get the Broncos in base defense. You want those 2 linebackers on the field. Strenard really is not that great in coverage. Singleton struggled in coverage. Even Greenlaw, who has traditionally been good in coverage, I mean, he's still kind of getting back into the flow of things. So you want those linebackers on the field. You don't want McMillan to come in, who has been one of the better coverage nickels really in the NFL for the last couple of years. So you don't want that. You want to force really, I think they had Jahdae Barron playing base corner. So to me, those are some matchup things. You want to get the Broncos in base. You want to take advantage of Jahdae Barron. You want to take advantage of some of those linebackers in the passing game, especially if you have a tight end like Brock Bowers.
Yeah, no, I mean, and obviously he showed the world that he's still that dude in his return to action there. 3 touchdowns, 12 catches. I think it was 127 yards. Was just balling out. I mean, I'm sure you watched that game. What did you take away from the way that they used him now when he's healthy?
Well, I think that you go and you look at a guy like him and McBride, who are
Hmm.
basically just black holes, not in a good sense of just
Yeah,
they're going to get a huge amount of target share. Well, what do both of those offenses do? They run a lot of 12 personnel. They really look good when they can run the ball. And what you've done is essentially taken a guy who is a it if the defense wants to play base, he's going to be on a linebacker or he's going to be on a safety. That's a
yeah,
mismatch. If he plays against, okay, we're going to go nickel with you. Okay, well, now you put him on a guy like McMillan who's like 5'8". That's a problem, right? So
yeah,
what do you still are going to manufacture that to where you now are going to have a safety on top of. So I think what it does to him is they basically use him as a leveraging tool. They see what the defense is going to do, and then for the Jaguars, they just didn't really have an answer. So what do? You just keep feeding him the rock and you get him moving. I think that's the other thing too is with some of these bigger body guys, yeah, he can run and everything, but he's not a receiver. So what do? You get him running in that intermediate. You force people to either run with him or to keep track of him through zones, make it easy, get those balls in front of the quarterback and make those throws easy, and then get him on the run on the other end because, again, people just don't want to tackle him. It's like kind of like tackling Derrick Henry
yeah.
for a whole game. By the end of the time, you're like, I don't want to deal with this dude anymore.
Yeah, no, that's so true, and it's crazy watching the way he does wear teams down. It is like a running back as the game goes on. He just keeps coming back, and he looked as healthy as ever. So obviously that's big for the Raiders, especially on a short week here going against the Broncos. I am curious though. We've talked about it in the offseason and the couple times we'd had you on since then as well. This receiving core for the Raiders, they didn't have a true number one. We're taking Brock out of the equation here in this one because obviously he's the number one in this whole offensive threat. But for the Raiders, they go and actually trade JAKOBI Myers to the Jaguars, so he is out of the equation now. So they've got Trey Tucker. They also added Tyler Lockett as well. Those are going to be their top two receivers, and also the rookie Jack Bech now probably likely slots into more of that JAKOBI type role. Maybe Tyler does as well. I'll be curious to see how they end up using him. But how do you think that this Raiders receiving core matches up against the Broncos secondary now?
Yeah, that's going to be a concern. I think people need to understand too, like Riley Moss is one of the better corners in the NFL. And I
Hmm.
know that that's hard to kind of wrap your head around because you have Pat Surtain on one side. But if you go and you look at the numbers, he's top 5 in target rate.
Yeah,
Typically, that means it's not very good, but that also shows you how good Pat Surtain is. Like,
exactly.
no one wants to throw to him. So we're not going to throw to him. We'll throw to the other guy. Well, he has one of the highest in completion rates. So his completion rate is actually super low. I think it's like right around 40%, which is a top 5, I think top 3 completion percentage for corners. So that's an issue on the outside. Like I mentioned, I think what you do is kind of have a similar plan to what the Bills kind of try and do, where everything is kind of a perimeter screen. It's some
Hmm.
sort of a quick hitter, get him moving, get guys moving in, try and move guys around to get the matchups on linebackers. Look, the one knock on Hufanga is probably in his coverage. Brandon Jones probably also, not in terms of, I'm talking like man-to-man coverage. Hufanga, there are times where he will look just completely lost in man coverage. So what you want to try and do is on some of these guys, especially like a Lockett or a Bech, is get them in a situation where, hey, we can get a mismatch on a safety. We can use them running intermediate on a crosser route. Remember, we're playing a lot of man coverage here. Jahdae Barron, again, a rookie, getting on some of these guys and then working some of these, intermediate routes that, Chip Kelly is pretty much famous for, especially like a wide cross, like just running that intermediate cross and all the different variations off of that. So I think that's going to be the key is you're going to have to run the ball a little bit and you don't want to necessarily get them to where they can really just lock in and play that man-to-man coverage.
Yeah, and when that's the one thing we always have been talking about throughout the entire season is like we need to see Chip really commit to the run and get Ashton Genty to like 20 plus carry mark. Obviously that didn't happen last week, but they did get him involved in the passing game, so the numbers kind of even out in that regard because he's still got his touches. But I'm curious how you think the Broncos go about trying to stop Ashton Genty.
Yeah, that's the one thing about this defense is still like everybody looks at this kind of the pass rush element of this defense, but they are actually one of the better run stopping defenses. If there is kind of a where are they not in the top 10, it would probably be maybe you can look at some like success rate rushing. They're probably not going to be in there. I think a lot of that has to do because of those defensive ends are just kind of rushing up the field. The linebackers tend to struggle. So the second level is not really where it probably should be in a sense. Like if you really want to have like an elite defense, like the Texans right now and how the way that they're playing defense, they have an elite secondary with elite front seven. They become a major issue. I think you even look at Seattle, it's kind of the same thing. So to me, that's where you really have to establish the run. You have to win your one-on-ones. That's going to be the key. Can your 5 offensive linemen win their one-on-ones against the 5 defensive linemen? And really internally, don't let Zach Allen take over the middle of the box.
Yeah, well, and I mean, to that note too, I mean, look, Jordan Meredith is a small guy, at center there, and he's had some issues here and there with some bigger bodies. I'm curious how you think, the Raiders' interior offensive line does fare against that group of guys out front, whether it is in the running game or, pass protection wise.
Yeah, I really think that's going to be the key to this game is they really inside. Can they hold up? Because if they can't, it's going to be evident really early. Because you mentioned it, again, game control is a real thing. So if we can't run the ball, and now the Broncos, let's say the Broncos score a couple of times on offense, the next thing I know is I have to start passing the ball because, again, the clock runs. I don't know if you watched that Cardinals Cowboys game on Monday night. I mean, it was like the first quarter was over in literally like 15 minutes. That's because both offenses had long drives and they kept it in the field of play. Well, that's kind of the thing with the Broncos where they'll run the ball so they can play keep away if you want them to. So to me, if I'm the Raiders, we've got to establish that run early. And that doesn't necessarily mean I need a bunch of like explosive plays in the run game. I need to know that I'm at least going to get 3 yards. If I know I can get 3 and Ashton Genty can give me a 4, 5, 6 yard gain, then we're going to be okay in the long term. That keeps everybody backed off, and then we can really lean into that play action passing game, which we know is going to be much better than if we just have to sit back and drop back, because this is a defense. You do not want to just drop back pass when they know it's going to be a drop back pass.
Yeah, and look, let's keep it real. The Raiders have really struggled in time of possession, especially the last 2 weeks. I mean, I think the Jags had it for nearly 43 minutes in the game, and then obviously we all know what happened in that game against the Chiefs before the bye week as well. Just total domination by them in terms of time of possession. So, yeah, you can't, talk about starting fast. Like, the Raiders need to start fast in this one because, like you said, don't want to be thrown against this defense. I do want to get to Riley Moss real quick. You mentioned to him. I was a little surprised to hear you say, how high you are on him there, because doesn't he also lead the league in penalties as well? So, like, where have been some of the issues with him? And I think it's interesting to see, like, that was that one area that I thought maybe the Raiders would try to have some success with him. Nice little slip there. People are going to have fun with that one.
Yeah, I think with Moss, you have to understand he is a freak athlete. I mean, the kid can play. I think the problem with him is he gets too handsy. I think his eyes are wrong half the time. So he's got his eyes up, which means he's grabbing. Remember, your eyes bring your hands bring your feet. And so sometimes he gets into trouble. He plays with his arms straight. So sometimes he will shoot those hands out. I call them like your Batman wings, right? You don't want to have wings. So when they shoot out, what that does is that splays your feet. So your feet get super wide. You don't have your feet underneath you. So sometimes he really gets out of kind of phase. And what that means is like now it's panic mode. And what do you do in panic mode? You grab. And so I think that has been an issue with him. So, yes, I have made the joke before, like after every play, he looks around to the refs and is like, okay, is it a penalty? I feel like every time he's just waiting for the flag. I think that can be fixed. I think that's correctable. Obviously, it's not going to get corrected this year. He needs to work on that in the offseason. That's something, again, I think that can be correctable. But in terms of production, not only is he good in the passing game, but he's also been attributing in the run game as well. He's been tackling really, really well on those perimeters. I mean, this is a wide zone league. This is a league that wants to attack the edges. He's been doing a really good job. I still think, though, he's a guy who is more of a finesse player. He's a finesse tackler. He's going to be in there and he's going to kind of be an ankle biter in terms of kind of cut tackle you. So I do think like there's a thing. Ashton Genty is not someone that you're just going to cut tackle or you're just going to wrap his legs up and he'll fall down. He's not that. I mean, he's balled up. So I think that that's something that you could attack him with in the run game. But in terms of passing, he's better than you think. It's the things that like you mentioned, he's the number one in penalties, which is a problem. But if you look at it from the whole point and look at it in the concept of, okay, what's his target share in the secondary? And then what's his completion percentage? He's actually doing really well. I think the other thing too, that people are going to look at, because remember, you can find a stat for anything. Yep. When he does give up completions, it tends to be, I think his completion number is almost like it's between 12 and 14, which is super high. But that's because he's playing a lot of man coverage. He's getting a lot of long balls because he's playing to the field. So to me, I think that that's part of it. It's just kind of, let's look at the whole picture, is that he's actually not bad. He's actually one of the better corners, and he'd probably start on almost all 32 teams.
Yeah, no, that's surprising for me because I thought we were going to have a different conversation in regards to him. So I'm going to have to kind of go back and watch him a little bit more for sure. I am curious, though. Surtain obviously hasn't played since the Cowboys game, likely doesn't play in this one. How has that impacted the defense on the back end? I mean, they still figured out ways to win, right? But
yeah, I mean, well, you go look at the last game with the Broncos. Who did they go attack on third downs? They went and attacked Abrams Drain. Abrams Drain versus the Cowboys looked absolutely scared of Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Like, absolutely. Yeah. He was playing off like almost 10 to 12 yards. He wasn't driving on anything. I thought he played a little bit better last week, but he's the person that you want to attack. In fact, it was to the point where they played Jahdae Barron, who's really kind of he's just a defensive back. Like, leave it at that. He can play anything. He can play safety, nickel. He can play corner. In base, they were using him as the outside corner, probably a lot like if you watch the Eagles, they bumped their guy out too. So I think, to me, he's one of the guys that I'm concerned with. If there's Abrams Drain when they get him in nickel, I'm good with McMillan. I think Jahdae Barron is a little bit iffy, but I think when you get Abrams Drain in there, that's the guy that you want to attack.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's kind of crazy. We're like over 15 minutes into this thing, and I'm just now bringing up Geno Smith versus this defense. We talked about a month ago about how there's no real like Geno Smith defense teams have been attacking him with. I'm curious, like, since we last spoke, what have you seen from Geno in terms of his play overall?
Yeah, we talk. I feel like it's almost like a broken record with Geno too, though. It's like you get these things, but then I feel like too, sometimes you look at what happened again with the batted ball down, things like that. Like sometimes it's just bad luck. But I think at the end of the day, you usually regress to the mean. I think he's going to have to throw into some really tight windows. I think he's going to have to throw on pressure. And that's going to be one of those things. Is he going to have a day where he cancels out the noise and he looks really good? He's comfortable in the pocket. He's comfortable with the pressure and he's just launching the ball like we know he can. Or are we going to get where he's got the rabbit ears up, he's hearing Benito and Cooper coming, he sees Zach Allen in his face, and now he's just kind of ducking and chucking? Because I think that can be the problem with him as well. Because like you said, I mean, I did the research we did in that one pod. I mean, I went and looked at it. I was trying to find, is there a game plan? And there really is not a game plan for him other than we're going to play our defense. We're going to try and get him in pressure. And then hopefully by giving him pressure and forcing him into playing a lot of drop back passing, that's when those mistakes will accumulate. He's one of those quarterbacks, kind of like what we saw with Daniel Jones with the Steelers, is it we forced you into a drop back passing game. You now have to throw the ball at volume. Now those problems that have plagued you your entire career start coming in and throwing the picks, throwing into tight coverage, doing some things that you're not supposed to do, maybe trying to extend plays when you need to just take the sack or throw the incompletion. And those, to me, that's what, if he can play a clean game and keep it close and the run game is manufactured there, this is the AFC West. It's going to be a divisional game. It could be very close at the end.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, like, we saw it initially in the game against the Titans, and I know the Titans are bad, but like the mold that they want to play in the Raiders, they want to play that ball control, not trying to like push the ball too far down the field and count on the run game and just be efficient, get the ball to guys quickly. One thing that we did talk about, though, when we spoke about a month ago was the fact that Geno was seemingly kind of holding on the ball a bit too long, that you had said you wanted to see him get it out quicker. Particularly, on the 2-point conversion where they go and lose the game, he did kind of double clutch. Like, are you seeing him not necessarily trust the first read, because when we talked to him after the game, he said they got everything they wanted. They got the look they wanted. They had the play they wanted. They had the route that Lockett was running. It was kind of everything. But he looked and he double clutched, and right when he did that, the defender jumps up, and the timing of when he actually threw it was like perfect to when he leaped. And I know there's so many other factors that go into a play, to not get a ball batted down. But do you still think he's not necessarily trusting that first read, or is it a matter of just going through the whole reads and holding it too long? Like, it just seems like there's a bit of uneasiness back there.
Yeah, I think he's one of those, like, if he knows where the ball's supposed to go, and I think we mentioned this on the pod that we did about him, is like when he feels like he knows what he's going to get and he knows where the defenders are going to be, he's really good and really quick. If you do any kind of coverage rotation, or you kind of make it to where it's difficult for him to wash out, I think what you're going to see from the Broncos is a lot of too high. Moving into single high post snap, trying to hide that shell just so that he has to really wade through that, because that is one of the things. Like, if he doesn't necessarily know, he's going to wait. That's kind of one of the things. Like, you don't want a quarterback that only throws to guys when they're open. Sometimes you have to throw the guy open, or you have to kind of see where the progression of the play is going. Is the guy going to beat the linebacker? I'm going to throw him on the other side. That, to me, is going to be the key for him. I think, too, with a lot of man coverage, or if they're in a lot of cover three, look, this is not a team that plays just a volume of kind of two deep coverage. So I think he's going to have an idea of where. It's just who's dropping, what safety's dropping, where's he dropping to. Once you identify that, then being able to have that read. The thing with Chip Kelly is this is a guy who's been at the college level forever. He can create half field reads all day long, and be able to build an offense to really help him out, especially if you kind of have an idea of where these looks are going to come from.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that does look against a solid one, and how Chip kind of goes about maybe trying to protect him, a bit more with the picks. I mean, he throws one last week against the Jags. That one wasn't his fault. Like, that was Michael Mayer needed to come back to the ball again. A little late to the sideline. You never want to do that, but I think his receiver in that sense could have helped him out there. Let's get to the Broncos offense. We talked a ton about the defense. Obviously, that's where your forte is. But man, offensively, you said it. They're not starting quick. What I guess has been the biggest issue for them of why they're not getting off to those fast starts?
Well, Bo Nix, I will say this. You have to give Sean Payton credit and Bo Nix credit. In a league where everything feels like a dink and dunk pass, because we're in just such a zone league now, that they are trying to push the ball down the field. And 2 of his touchdowns late came off of deep balls. But early on, throwing a couple of those, he had the interception on a throw that he just kind of floated it out there. Again, faded it back inside. When he doesn't throw to the sideline and have that receiver who's already stacked on the DB fade back to the sideline, it just opens up for that DB to come back underneath, or the safety over top to come. That's kind of been the problem. The abandonment of the run game, they'll have like 2 runs where it's like a 6-yard gain, and then the next one's a 10-yard gain, and then they won't run the ball for 3 times. And you're just kind of like, hey, sometimes you feel like they just have to get their plays in. Whereas it's like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, just kind of run that ball. Sometimes we go through periods where, we'll just throw the ball or something. And look, Sean Payton is the best at screens. I think they even showed a highlight of it last week of like, he's number 1 in the amount that they throw it, number 1, I think, in completion percentage, and number 1 in yards gained off of screens. So he's really good with that. It's just kind of sometimes when they call them, understanding the defense knows that you're trying to run screens as well too. So a lot of times these defensive ends just jet up the field. So if you're trying to throw some of these perimeter screens, it can be difficult for Nix. He's kind of like, well, if that guy jets up the field, I don't really have an opportunity to throw. That's been getting them into some trouble as well. But I think early on, it's just getting Nix in a repeatable pattern of like feeling comfortable. I'm making completions. He's not going to be one of those guys that goes like 10 for 10 to start a game. And that's what we need. We need more games where he's 6 for 6, 8 for 8, 10 for 10 to start the game, because we're getting them into these, we're getting him really, repped a lot. He feels good and comfortable, and he's seeing the ball come out.
Yeah, when you mentioned the screens, obviously the Chiefs, had a lot of fun against the Raiders going to the screen game real quick. How do you think that offense will fare in the screen game against the Patrick Graham defense?
Yeah, look, Graham is going to run a lot of cover 3. There's going to be some coverage rotation stuff. We all know that. To me, though, I think the pattern is there. I think teams understand that, hey, they're trying to keep everything kind of in front of them, which allows your screen game to really blossom. Because if you just don't have a lot of people matching and aggressive and working down, you're not going to get a lot of man coverage. And I think what happens with that is if you play a lot of soft coverage, then you have opportunity for yards after catch. I mean, the 49ers and the Rams have just lived off of this kind of thing, especially the 49ers with Shanahan have just kind of lived off of teams kind of playing them a little bit soft. And then they just go, okay, fine, we'll throw these perimeter screens. We'll do this. I think the Dolphins, again, another Shanahan system, is excellent at attacking the perimeter on this. I think the one element that I would like to see is more Bo Nix designed runs. Just as an element that's a little bit more prevalent than a gotta have it. The past couple of weeks, he's had a couple of quarterback sweeps that have really sealed the game for them. So it would be nice to see that early. I think that also for the screen game, now your RPO stuff, like basically your college offense stuff, you can start kind of trickling in there that the Broncos will do. I saw a couple weeks ago, they ran a flop read off of this, which means that the back is actually opposite the read side. So Bo Nix has to look completely opposite the side. So they do some interesting things, and they have some answers for the way defenses play them.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And we saw Liam Cohen, bust a little bit of the read option stuff out as well, in this game against him. And used Trevor Lawrence, I think, effectively at times when he did run. I mean, there was one screen play in particular where he took it in for a touchdown. So impressive the way they did that. So the Raiders got to look out for that for sure. I'm curious, in the running game, we've seen JK and RJ Harvey have some success this year. What areas have they really shined in the running game for you so far?
Well, I think really RJ Harvey's kind of been this gadget guy that can kind of get them into situations where, again, we talk about screen game. He had a really nice wheel route out of the backfield. He can be a problem that way. I think with J.K. Dobbins, he's just the hammer, right? I mean, that's kind of what they had with Williams last year. Now they have J.K. Dobbins, just feed him the rock in between the tackles. You have RJ Harvey, who's kind of that hybrid guy that can be inside, outside. You can use him. So it really keeps the defense disjointed because, look, the same plays that J.K. Dobbins runs, you can turn around and hand that off to RJ Harvey, or you can have him in there and he can go and catch a ball, in the flat and take it to the house. So because we've seen that the past couple of weeks as well. He's really explosive when they get the ball in his hand. I think that they have a good mix, and that's the exact kind of mix that you want as a team. It's like we want to have kind of that battering ram guy that's our true running back, but then we want to have kind of like, I guess a gadget guy would be the way to say it, is just kind of, or the hybrid running back that can kind of give you the screens, but you can also hand him the ball in between the tackles and he's going to get you yardage.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been impressive to watch the way they've kind of orchestrated that for sure. And, the Raiders have hung their hat on trying to stop the run. It's come here and there. I mean, man, they had like 16 missed tackles, I think, in the game against the Jaguars this last weekend. So obviously didn't fare too well in that regard there. But one of the things that's really stood out to me defensively is that they're not getting a ton of, help from a lot of the guys outside of Max Crosby up front. So I'm curious, like, from your perspective as a defensive coach and your background, when you've got teams constantly chipping like your dog on the D line there, and, a lot of teams are doing that against Max, trying to take him out of it, and the supporting cast hasn't really quite shown up. How do you go about trying to generate and get that group going opposite a guy like Max?
A couple of ways that you could do this is just get them moving. You can stunt. The problem with stunting in the NFL at a high volume is that there's more of a chance that you're going to be in the wrong gap, or they're going to run away from your stunt, or you called the wrong stunt. That's kind of get the guys moving is one way to do that. Same thing with Max Crosby. Don't just let him be a sitting duck for these chips or double teams and things like that. He's just such a one-man wrecking crew. I will agree with you that they've kind of let some guys go, like Diablo, Spillbane, have kind of, they're not there anymore on the middle. And like I mentioned that with the Broncos defense, if there's one glaring issue, it's probably at the second level. So maybe your guys up front do their job. It gets to the second level. They're nowhere to be seen. So it's kind of like, look, the thing about run defense is like, there's no heroes and there's no cowards. Like you can't be a hero. And so like, I think that's part of the problem sometimes with like Max Crosby, is that sometimes he feels like he has to be a hero. And so sometimes he'll go in there and dive in there and it's like, oh, well, he missed a tackle. Well, but there's nobody behind him. Yeah. And so now it springs open. And so it's kind of like he has to, it's the old saying, like an old coach saying, you're either an asshole or you're a hero. Well, if you're not the hero, then you're the asshole because now there's nobody behind you. And I think like that's kind of been the problem with Max Crosby. I think too, you can have problems when not everybody else is on the same page or not everybody else is kind of giving the same effort. Is that, oh, well, he'll just clean it up. Well, look, at the end of the day, he's one guy. That's the thing again about defense. There's no heroes, there's no cowards. So you have to show up in the run game. Everybody has to tackle. It's just, are you doing, it's literally, it's like, I could give you every cliche.
Yeah.
Do your 111,
exactly.
do your job, fit the gap that you're supposed to be in. I think that's kind of the problem that you see. And then at the end of the day too, when you play good offensive line, sometimes you get manhandled when you don't have the talent. You look at a Broncos offensive line that's really good. They're really good and they're built from the inside out. Bowles is a mauler at the left tackle. And so they're able to kind of get that push, and it can get really, really frustrating and demoralizing as you go on. Look, there's nothing worse than being in the fourth quarter and they're just pounding the rock and it's 5-yard gain after 5-yard gain after you've been dealing with that. We talked earlier in the podcast about game control. When you can control the line of scrimmage, look, we know play action passing is much more efficient a lot of times than just drop back passing, especially on early downs. So when our run game's going and they in the second level and even the third level is like, well, I don't know if our front line can stop. What does that do? That opens things up in the back end. So it all compounds and it all works together. Football is one of the most complementary sports in the sense that, especially on defense, every level has to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. Every level has to fit where they're supposed to fit. And it's like a synchronized dance, really, is what it is. Really, your run fits have to be that way. And when you have one guy who feels like he has to make every single play, that can actually be a detriment to the team instead of, hey, everybody trusts everybody. I'm going to sit where I'm at because I know the guy next to me is going to fit where he's supposed to be.
No, definitely. And one thing, too, I actually want to talk about, you mentioned early downs. That's something the Raiders defense has struggled with a lot because we have seen, teams get a lot of third and manageable situations, particularly in the game against the Jags. They had 7 third and threes or less. And then they also converted on 3 of their 3 fourth down conversions, which were like within a yard or two in the red zone as well. So a lot of short yardage situations on third and fourth downs. Where have the Broncos had the most success on early downs?
Yeah, I really think it's been the run game on the early downs to get them in these second and manageable, because then now you still have that play action ability on the second down. The problem is when you throw on first down and you don't get a completion, then now you're in the second and long. Now we got to pass again. I will say this, though. I do need the Broncos to pass a little bit more on early downs. I thought that was pretty evident last week of this. They really relied too much on the run game and you weren't getting. So what happens is people figure out like, oh, well, they're really just trying to run the ball to get a 3-4 yard gain on first down. Well, we'll just kind of load the box. We know that we're not going to get anything outside. And so that becomes more and more of an issue. That's one of the things that I would like to see against the Raiders is to come out and maybe pass a little bit more on early downs to get them ahead of the chains, like really ahead of the chains. And these are not shots. You're not taking a 40-yard bomb on your 25-yard line, 30-yard line. This is more or less like running an RPO, running a glance route back off of some sort of a play action, running a intermediate crossing route off of play action, like getting him moving, throwing, he loves a slant and he loves a flat, a slant flat and things like that in this system. So it's like just creating these easy throws into some of these zone coverages that you're going to get to manufacture it. And then once you start feeling people creep up because that run game is really working, then that's when you hit them over the top.
Definitely. And lastly here for, the defensive side of things, or at least the Raiders defensive side of things, like how do you think Patrick Graham is going to try and come out? Or if you were Patrick Graham, how would you come out and try and stop this Broncos offense?
Well, I think you try and stop the run early. You just kind of say, look, we've got to survive some of these passes early on. If we can stop the run, then we can get them in drop back passing. We know Bo Nix is going to struggle in that just a little bit. So let's get him in situations. And then when we do that, let's be smart about it. Not necessarily blitz him because we don't want him scrambling. Let's keep everything in front of us. Let's do a lot of, basically kind of not necessarily a spy, but some flush stunts to get him going in places where he thinks, okay, I can escape. And then, oh, here comes a guy. I think too, if Max Crosby can have a huge day during these drop back passing situations, it's going to make it really, really difficult for the Broncos to get any kind of tread on the offense. And so that's kind of what you want. You want to really make sure that you don't allow them to establish any kind of momentum early on the downs, especially in the run game, and then kind of force, that he struggles early to hit these deep shots. So maybe kind of leverage that for yourself, really pack the box, stop the run, get them into passing situations. And so now they're back on their heels. Hopefully the offense can score some points or get them in there. Don't be like the Texans and kick 5 field goals. And so, I think that's the other thing too. Like, defense a lot of time mirrors the offense. You got to score touchdowns on offense too.
Yeah. No, definitely 100%. And lastly, we got to get your take on what happens in the game itself. I was pulling up the line here as expected, a pretty long one. The Broncos come in as 9.5-point favorites. Do you think that's a good one? And also, what do you think ends up happening on Thursday out there in Denver in a short week?
I think it's a short week. It simplifies a lot of things. I think that's a good thing for the Broncos. I don't like Patrick Graham's one of those guys that he can really scheme something up if he feels like he has an idea. I think you're going to get simple defenses. You're going to get simplified offense. I think Bo Nix is going to do well. I think nine's a lot of points.
Yeah.
I think that, look, this is a divisional game on a short week. I think that the Broncos haven't had rest either. So I think like this is more or less, I still think they win. But I think it's like a 24-17 game, or even like I could see it if they beat it, it's like a 24-10 and then the Raiders just can't score. But that would be, I would have hard pressed. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I don't see the Broncos scoring like 30 points. I don't think they're not playing the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's one thing. Honestly, like I think a lot of Raiders fans right now, many of them have punted on the season. I've been avoiding a lot of the draft talk and any of that stuff because I hate that because it's freaking November. But I get a lot of people punting on it. And so I think right now a lot of Raiders fans are probably just thinking, hey, like, let's be competitive in these games, much like they were in the Jags. And I think a lot of them are celebrating when they lose now, which is crazy because then they maintain draft positioning. And again, it's November. I hate even bringing any of that up right now.
I'm not like that either. I like that.
Yeah, I don't like doing that. Like, there's a time and a place for that. Like, right now you got to really dive into it all and cover it. But yeah, no, I think the Raiders fans would actually be happy about that. But although these rivalry games against a team like Denver, like they want nothing more than to beat the Broncos. Not that long ago, the Raiders had owned Denver. Obviously, things have flipped a little bit there. Cody, thanks again for the time, man. We took up a ton of your time, but before we do get you out of here, what is it that you have cooking over the next couple of days here that fans can look out for leading to this game?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to know what the Broncos are doing, I have several articles that I've written just recently here over at Match Quarters that you can go in. This Monday, I'm talking about the Seattle Seahawks and how good Mike McDonald's is doing. I've got other things coming in. I've got podcasts coming out tomorrow. Let's Talk Ball. If you want a football show that like breaks down kind of X's and O's, that's what I've got there. And then just breaking down what's going on trend wise in the defenses, especially in the NFL. So if you're interested in defense at all, matchquarters.com is the place to go.
Yeah, it definitely is. Also, guys, make sure you check out his article, The Hufanga Effect, as well. He really dove into how they're using him and all that stuff. A great article there. So I'm glad we brought you on to talk a little bit about that. But for more info on it, make sure you subscribe and check it out, guys. Cody, as always, you're always so gracious with the time, man. We appreciate it each and every time we bring you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, look, guys, I know Cody's a Broncos fan, but you can't hold that against him. The dude knows ball, and he is a great guy as well. If you haven't seen his stuff on matchquarters.com, really do go check it out. It'll vastly improve not only your understanding of defensive schemes in football, but just the game in general. He does a great job of breaking it down. In the meantime, though, let's get to week 10 of our Raiders Rounders segment. We normally drop these on Friday's show, but since the Friday edition of that show is actually going to be the post-game reaction podcast, since they play on Thursdays, we're going to get to Matt a little bit earlier this week. This week, Matt offers up his take on the Thursday Nighter and how the short week impacts both teams and how it could impact the total of this game as well. Plus, he's always got his best bets on the NFL slate of games, too. All right, Matt, we're back for week 10 of Raiders Rounders. Let's dive into it. But before we get into kind of the mix of everything this week, we want to recap a little bit what we saw in that game against the Jaguars. You took the Raiders to cover, which they did. They go on and lose by 1 point in overtime. And then also we took the under on Geno Smith pass attempts. That didn't transpire. He actually threw for 39 on the day. How do you wrap your head around the way everything kind of finished for them in that one?
Well, anytime you're going to go to an overtime with an under prop like that, chances are you're going to lose. So the OT kind of destroyed our ability to come in with a 33.5 for that. So once that game went to overtime, I said, all right, that prop's dead. But I mean, look, and sorry coming to you guys. Normally I'm in my home studio. Now it's a short week, so I'm in my car. So I apologize for the aesthetics of what we're looking at.
Show goes on regardless.
Show goes on. Short week on a Thursday for the Raiders. That's why we're taping it now. But yeah. I think, I mean, look, there was some wild things that happened in that game, and I don't disagree with the play with the decision to go for two. I just disagree with the play call to go for two and having a play that gets batted down at the line of scrimmage with a game on the line where I would much have rather have seen some type of innovative play call, something to guarantee that wasn't going to happen, a rollout of some sort with Geno Smith or giving the ball to Ashton Genty. I mean, Pete Carroll again, short yardage at the goal line, you throw the ball versus running the ball, you lose in the Super Bowl and you lose at home against the Jaguars. So like, it was like deja vu as a Patriot fan. It was like deja vu all over again, and the ball getting batted down. It was a frustration. I mean, talk about a crazy game in which BetMGM took a $1 million in-game bet and at plus 1.5, and that, hey, sorry.
For the folks listening at home, the phone just fell down. But again, not in the normal studio setup. We do keep it going regardless.
Everything crashed. But, I mean, $1 million gets cashed on a hook, $800,000 payoff because of that 2-point play failing for the Raiders. So I think if you are a Raider fan, you can take some solace that your team played hard at home, but it's the NFL. We got to win football games, and it was a bummer to see a loss for the Raiders.
Yeah, no, hey, look, and I'll say in terms of my analysis, just on the 2-point conversion, I didn't mind the play call. I thought they had to pass in that situation, to be completely honest. And Geno did say they got the look exactly like they wanted. They thought the coverage was going to be, that week 3, and that's exactly what they got. I think the biggest thing was he double clutches. If he would have trusted his first instinct, he gets that out before the guy jumps. Instead, he double clutches, and it times up perfectly with the guy leaping. Also, as well, you can't put it all on Geno because Dylan Parham, the left guard, was blocking, looking back to help, I think Stone Forsythe it was, instead of kind of punishing the guy that was leaping. So a whole lot of things to go into it. I think they had it there. It's just, again, I think that's one of those ones where it's like unlucky / like Geno, not process faster, but like trust your read. Just trust your read, let it rip, in my mind. But with that, the Raiders now fall to 2-6 on the year. A short week, as we noted, heading to Denver to take on the Broncos. So now the big question, Matt, is as they head into Week 10 here, do you think they rebound against the Broncos with that 9.5-point spread?
I do. I think this is a short week, divisional game, and everyone's going to bet against the Raiders. We have seen this before where if I'm getting 9.5 points in a divisional game with an offense, unless Geno throws picks, it's a big if, okay? Geno can't throw picks. Yeah. But if he doesn't throw picks, okay? We just saw Daniel Jones go on the road with 6 turnovers after not turning the football over at all. So as long as that doesn't happen, I expect the Raiders to keep this within 7 points. They probably lose this game, but I think it's worth taking the points and then looking in game, take the 9.5, and then see as the game progresses. If you get Denver at 2 or 2.5, go ahead and fire on the Broncos and try to middle it. If the Broncos win between 3 and 9, you cover. So that's how I'm going to approach this game because it's simply just too many points in a divisional game on a short week to get to lay 9.5 points. I'm not doing that with anybody, let alone a divisional round game or divisional game. So give me the Raiders plus 9.5.
Yeah, no, hey, I like it. Look, these divisional games on a short week, like you said, anything can happen. They're always kind of crazy. I do think everyone in the world is going to be picking against the Raiders, so we'll see how they fare out there. The familiarity between these teams, especially, again, in the division or in the short week, always does make it interesting. The number on this one, I believe it's the 3rd lowest total of the week. How do you digest that?
Short week, Thursday night football, Broncos are maybe the best defense in football. That's why. I think the under's a good play. I think if you like to do same game teasers, you can pull. I would wait to see if the number comes back a bit to 9 and then pull it down to Denver -3 and then go ahead and take the total from wherever it closes, add 6 points, go up and take under. So I do think the number's going to come down. So if you do like the under in the game, I think you should play it early because I think everyone's going to bet the under. But turnovers, again, have a big factor in how the game will flow. If we see a bunch of turnovers, it could lead to points. Now, a lot of turnovers, under in the dog, favorite in the over. Feels like it's a correlated play on Thursday.
Yeah, and the number on that one, I didn't say it before. It's 42.5. So like you said, like Matt said, keep an eye on that, how that's going, but you probably want to jump on that one quick. Also, in terms of the props, we noted the Geno pass attempts last week. I think we have one that you said you've been betting every week that just seemingly is a lock.
Genty's going to score. I mean, you can do the Brock Bowers touchdown if you want, but he scored 3, so the books are going to play some insurance there. The cost is not going to be great, but I got even money on Ashton Genty anytime touchdown against the Jaguars. It should be somewhat priced similarly coming up here this week. It's a rinse and repeat. I mean, he is their offense in the red zone. He's their offense now in the passing game as well. So I like Genty to get in the end zone again. So it's just another game, another bet, Ashton Genty touchdown.
Yeah, I would keep hammering that too. I mean, week in and week out, the guy's coming through and they want to keep feeding him. Right now, he does lead all rookies in terms of rushing yards and rushing attempts. We all have been screaming it should still be more. We'll see if that happens here this week in Denver. That's an area like you want to be able to establish the run right away against this defense. And I know we say that each and every week, but even more so, you do not want to have to kind of throw the ball against this Broncos defense. Their pass rush has been insane. I believe they have 40 sacks. The next closest team has 28. It's just unreal. In terms of diving into the week ahead, the slate here, let's go international first. We'll go Falcons and Colts. Right now, the Falcons coming to this one as 6.5-point dogs.
I'm done with the Colts. I mean, I know it's 1 week, but I've been waiting for Shane Steichen and company to turn into a pumpkin, and it happened against the Steelers with 6 turnovers. And this Falcons defense is opportunistic, and they're mad. Look, they should have beaten the Patriots. I'm a Patriot fan. They should have been at least in overtime against the Patriots. Their kicker missed a kick, so they had to go, and they lost the game 23-24. Patriots were fortunate. I'll take the points. Give me the Falcons to keep the game close. I think it's probably a 3-point game one way or the other, but that defense for the Falcons is playing really well. There's a lot of talent on that offense. And look, I love the Sauce Gardner addition for the Colts, but is he going to play? All right. I mean, is he going overseas? Is he going to go? I mean, how fast is he getting on a plane and flying over there? So I think in the future, Sauce Gardner shutting down one half of the field, especially in the fourth quarter for that Colt defense, is huge. But this week, give me the 6.5 points. I'll take the Falcons.
Yeah, I agree with you. They probably played safe too in that one. Let's keep it moving now. Jags and Texans. Obviously, the Raiders just saw the Jags. This one's real close. The Jags coming to this one as 1.5-point dogs. I'm curious how you kind of dissect that one because obviously the Houston Texans have a pretty stout defense.
I don't get the number. JAKOBI Meyers going to Jacksonville. He finally gets his wish, traded from the Raiders to Jacksonville. He'll play. Don't know how much of a weapon he will be, at least in week 1 with this Jaguars offense. I've not been high on the Jags all year long, and you mentioned the Broncos defense. Well, if the Broncos are 1, the Texans are 2 in terms of defense, and it's Trevor Lawrence on the road. I know he's played very well against Houston and kind of owned the Texans a little bit, but if I'm only going to lay a point, it's basically a pick-'em game with a home favorite. I like Houston here to win this game, even with all their offensive problems. I mean, Travis Hunter is not going to play. He's got that injury that's keeping him off the field. I like Texans. Lay the point, Texans at home.
Yeah, and just on the note on JAKOBI, I think he ends up getting a pretty decent amount of burn with them, and I think he can kind of settle in quickly. Edgar Bennett is their receiver coach. He coached him here for 2 years in Vegas as well, so he'll get him up to speed real quick. And at the end of the day, too, JAKOBI's a vet. He's a pro. Go throw him out there in the slot, let him go over the middle. That's his game. As we keep it moving along here to an interesting one for both of us here. We got the Patriots and the Buccaneers going at it. This one is an interesting one. Look, I'll be honest, the Pats have looked better than I thought this year, and the Bucs keep battling through all these injuries. The spread on this one is 2.5 points. You guys come in as the 2.5-point dogs. Sounds like you're going against your squad, huh?
Yeah. Look, the Patriots are 7-2. This has been awesome. 7-2 is tremendous. Drake May, MVP. Look at the quarterback rankings. He's arguably playing the best at the position of anybody in the game. The level of competition has to be acknowledged here. I love the Bucs. I've been riding Baker for years. I love their defense, even with the injuries. I like their offense. They're going to get Bucky Irvin back to play this week to run the football. The Patriots defense has been tremendous. They shut down Bijan Robinson again. They don't give up 50 yards. Forget 100 yards. You don't get 50 yards rushing on this Patriot defense. But you're going to be able to throw the ball down the field. Baker's going to be able to throw the ball down the field. And frankly, I expect Drake May and company to come back down to earth a little bit here. Drake hasn't had a bad game in 2 months. He's due. Okay? He's due to have a 2-interception, a fumble type game. He fumbled the ball at the end of the first half against the Falcons, was really lucky that didn't burn him. They've been playing with fire in New England. Under a field goal, give me the Bucs. I'll lay the 2.5.
Todd Bowles just cranking it up against them and shutting down that crazy ride for the Pats this far. As a Bucs fan, I like hearing that from you because you've been pretty solid on your picks this year. So let's hope it keeps rolling at least this week, in regards to that game. I'll be a happy man, that's for sure. We'll close it out here in the division for the Raiders. We got to talk some Chargers and Steelers. The Steelers are on the road taking on the Chargers on Sunday Night Football, and the Steelers come in as 2.5-point dogs in this game.
Look, everyone's going to play the trend because this is the third straight game the Steelers will be dogs. This is very rare here, okay? But they're on the road, they're on the West Coast, and frankly, Tomlin's been good in primetime. He really has. He's been good. So you got to be careful with this number. I wouldn't go to 3. He's bad on Thursday. He's really good on Sunday, really good on Monday. I just think this Charger team understands what is in front of them, and they have got to start playing better football than what they have. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they have the better defense, and I think they play like it coming up here. I'm not in love with this game, but I think the Chargers are the side. But watch injury reports and watch how this game flow happens because you might need to bet out of it in game because the Steelers under Tomlin in primetime have been a very good bet.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see how that Joe Alt injury impacts the Chargers going forward. That's an interesting game to watch for sure. Matt, with that, that's all we got for you this week. Before we do go, we are taping early, like everybody knows. Normally, this drops in our Friday episode because the Raiders are playing a short week. That Friday episode is going to be a post-game recap. So, in the meantime, what can people look out for? This one, again, will be dropping on Wednesday in the days following that for you in terms of just betting content in general.
At Sports Talk Matt, all my stuff on Twitter, X. If you guys are on it, you guys check out the Daily Juice podcast or the Bostonian versus the Book, wherever you guys get your audio or video podcasts. Just go and search Ask Boston versus the Book or the Daily Juice.
Yeah, Matt, we appreciate it, man. As you guys that are watching obviously saw throughout this, he's not in the normal studio. Even when he's out and about running around doing the daddy duty stuff, he still hops on the show and still drops some great knowledge for you. Matt, as always, we appreciate it, man. We'll see you next week. As always, good stuff from Matt there. And now, as we get ready to close things out, it is time for my pick for the Raiders game against the Broncos. Sometimes I drag on with these, but the show is getting a bit long here. So for our Wednesday edition, I'm going to try and keep this one as short and sweet as possible. Let's be real. Got to pick the Broncos in this one. Just a better team. I thought the Raiders could get it done against the Jags last week. No dice there. I just can't pick them this week here against one of the hottest teams in the league. They've won 6 straight, and that's a defense that's doing it better than just about anybody else out there right now. They have 12 more sacks than the next closest team, and Vance Joseph is on fire. I don't care what the Raiders defense does. I don't think their offense will be able to score enough against this group here, given how solid the Broncos have looked on defense. But it's a short week. So watch them come out and get it done and light the world on fire. Look like the team that we saw in the second half of the season, second half of the opener there against the Patriots. That would be very fitting, wouldn't it? But anyway, guys, that was a good show. I had a lot of fun with this one, chopping it up with Matt early, and then also bringing Cody on. I just enjoy talking to him about all that stuff. He really does a great job breaking down the game. So, as I always say, I mentioned up at the top there, guys, make sure you check us out at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and do subscribe to our free Raiders newsletter. And also like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening to us. If you like what you heard, keep those reviews coming in. Hit us with that 5-star review and leave a comment as well. We want to keep growing the brand and get this thing rolling even more. But as always, we do appreciate you guys watching and listening. In the meantime, please do take it easy. Enjoy the next couple days. And we will see you on Thursday following the game for our post-game reaction podcast as soon as that one wraps up in Denver. Take it easy.